right, so thank you everybody for coming. Thanks to AOL Ventures for hosting us.
Is that thing on?
And thanks to Gus for pizza and beer. Thanks to Laurel for agreeing to come and share her story with us. So,
I hope a lot of you are going to cry. Because I am. No, okay.
So Laurel is the founder of MediaBistro, now an angel investor, net startup mentor / guru. And Laurel started out as a journalist, which made her a freelance, well, she wanted being a freelance journalist. And she wanted to hang out with some people in her industry, so she started doing a monthly cocktail party.
Yeah, I was very lonely. Any of you guys ever been lonely? Yeah, you know that feeling. So I was working from home with my 2 bouncing baby cats, jumping all over my keyboard and stuff. And I wanted to get out once in a while and meet people. And I moved from Miami to the Northeast, and I didn't really know anybody in New York. I wasn't a New Yorker. So I ran into this fellow at a cafe, and he and I struck up a conversation, and we weren't attracted to each other. So we decided to host a cocktail party to meet other people like us, who were journalists. He was a journalist too, who were lonely. So it was like a Lonely Hearts Club, but it was 1994.
And how did you tell people about these parties?
Which was significant. 1994, remember, no email. So we basically went through our little Rolodexes, and I called up about 10 people that I knew in the industry. And honestly, I've been in the media industry for 8 years, and I knew 10 people. That was how pathetic it was. It was really hard to build a network before all these, social networks, basically. So I called my 10 people, and I said, hey, come to a party we're doing. It's going to be like a salon. It's going to be very high-minded. We're going to talk about ideas. My secret motive being meet guys, and B, get more work. Because I was a freelance writer, I wanted to meet, editors-in-chief of Rolling Stone and, all these great magazines. So I called those people and invited them. And that's how we had the first party, and there were only 10 people there. And today, if you look at MediaBistro and what's happened, it's evolved into a huge community, offline and online, of millions of people. So it started with this little kernel, it started with a little party, and it evolved into a business.
And so after it got too big to the phone calls and to call everybody and invite them, started sending postcards.
Yes. So one of the things that people really enjoyed was being dominated at a party. They liked it. I noticed that early on because I was kind of intimidated by these people. They were like big shots, some of them. Not the ones I knew, but the ones that my friend who was co-hosting it with me knew. And so I would go up to them and I'd be like, hi, I'm the host of the party. And then they would treat me nicely. But before that, they would just look past me. And so I was like, okay. So I started kind of getting into this whole groove of like, I'm the host of the party. All right, I'm the host of the party. You have to pay attention to me. And so I'd literally just take people around the room and say, Justin, you must meet this woman over here and this guy over here. You're going to love him. And then literally I would pull people together, and they started dating because of me. They started getting jobs because of me. They started hiring because of me. And so they came back and they'd say, Laurel, I love this party. You've got to keep doing it. And I'm going to bring my friends next time. I'm going to bring all my friends. So it grew very organically that way.
So was social capital a term in 1996?
No way.
Because that was really, you were building social capital. That's really what you were doing.
I was building my Rolodex from 0 to millions of people, basically. And it could have just been that, like a giant Rolodex. And people would say to me, you should make money off this. You should make a living off of parties. And I couldn't figure out, how do you make a living off of parties? Party promoter? No, that's not my style. Or, headhunter, recruiter. Well, I had a database and I was helping people get jobs, but I didn't want to do that either. So I couldn't figure it out.
But so then AOL launched and you started an email newsletter.
That's true.
And you started emailing.
It all comes back to AOL, right?
But how many emails could you send at a time?
You could only send 10 emails at a time through AOL, okay, or like a very, very limited number. And I mean, I was happy because at least I was able to use email by that time. That was like, so I started in '94 with no email, just doing postcards and phone calls and faxes. Remember the fax machine? Any of you guys remember that? So, and then when AOL and email came along, I was like, oh my God, thank you, thank you. And even though I had to sit there for literally hours, cutting and pasting, cutting and pasting, cutting and pasting.
600 emails.
Yeah, because at that time I had built up the list to 600 people. I was so proud. Cutting and pasting, cutting and pasting, cutting and pasting. Finally, I could hit send.
And they would only let you send a certain amount of, I remember it, well, if you send too many emails, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you're sending too many emails.
Yeah, you're
I'll let you down. Yeah.
and shut down the account.
And then, so Laurel kind of, like, you know, Apple just makes these tech decisions for people. Laurel made this decision. She's like, if you don't have email, you can't come to the party.
Yeah, at a certain point, the party got written up in the New York Times. So it started to become really big, right? You know, people were calling me on the phone. They found my phone number. I was listed in the phone book. Remember the phone book? No.
Just be writing down facts.
Yeah, all these old technologies. So I had my phone number listed, and when the New York Times wrote a story about how this was the hot party for guys to meet girls in the media, and you know, I was connecting people to jobs in the media, that's when everybody started calling me. And so I made a rule at the next party that you had to have email, because otherwise I just couldn't contact you. I couldn't send any more postcards.
And then you found somebody to build you a
Well,
website.
then first I did a newsletter. So I would always hear about this guy on the West Coast who I was supposed to meet, and maybe I would fall in love with him. I mean, that's not what they told me. That was my undercurrent. You know, that was what was going on all the time in my mind. Maybe it's the man, right? So everyone would talk about this guy. They'd say he's really in the community. He loves doing what you're doing. He organizes people. He's great. And then I met Craig Newmark. He was starting up the same thing that I was doing on the West Coast. I'm so envious. If I'd only been less of a snob, I could have had Craigslist. Because I wanted only media people on my little, at my little parties and in my little circle. Because of that, I didn't go big. I didn't go broad. I went very, very narrow. So in the beginning, I started sending out this e-newsletter, and it had job listings, it had event listings, and it had office space, and anything that the community really told me that they wanted. So that newsletter became the basis of the business that would come out of it later. And so, yeah, in the beginning, there was just this little newsletter that I would hand do. And then finally someone said, Laurel, you're working so hard on this newsletter, and you know, we'd like to help you, but we're busy with our careers. And she suggested that I put up a website. And by then, it was like 1995, 96. And I said, okay, maybe it is time for me to put up a website. You know, nobody had a website, but I mean, there weren't many websites out there, but I thought, well, this was useful. You know, I was going to help the people who were coming to the parties and really give them exactly what they were getting at the parties in the newsletter. And so her boyfriend offered to do all the code for the website for free. I said, great. And she said, all you have to do is give him every banner ad in perpetuity, as long as you use his code. And I said, sure, what's a banner ad? And sure enough, nobody knew what a banner ad was then either. So people would click on that thing and go to his site, and they would think it was my site. It was all very confusing. But the first website had the same things that the parties had. It had attitude, it had an insidery feel, it had a community feel, there was a bulletin board, there were job listings, and it was all self-serve. You could put all the stuff up yourself. I mean, not the attitude, but definitely the job listings and the bulletin board. And it had event listings and resources. And that was the basis for the company.
And I think it's also really interesting, so the guy actually didn't give Laurel her own URL. He just gave her a page of his own website.
Yeah. So the other funny thing is, to get to my website, you had to know the secret code, because, you know, I mean, it was just a long name, goldennyc.com/press club. So not a lot of people could remember that as a domain name. So they would inevitably just send each other these little secret emails saying, go to the site, go to the site.
Well, it's important back then URLs were like easy to get. Everybody had a simple domain name.
Well, maybe not everybody, but they were a lot easier than today, for sure. Yeah.
Now it would be MediaBistro.
Yes. You're so right. Even MediaBistro was quite long. I think back then even it was hard to get a good. No. By the time I was doing it, it was 1999. By the time I switched to MediaBistro. So anyway, I had this weird domain, and I started to realize maybe there's something going on here in the internet, because the job listings became really wildly popular. The traffic to the site was greater than any number of party guests I had on my list. So basically through word of mouth, it was starting to organically grow exponentially. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe this is more than just a party, maybe this is something else.
And then you called it Higher Minds?
Yeah. So the guy who hosted
IRE and IGH. Yeah.
So any of you guys from the bad old days of Higher Minds? Okay. Yes! So it was, so I went from his domain to Higher Minds because I thought, okay, people are hiring people and we have a higher purpose, so it's a play on words, ha ha ha. So I bought that domain and I bought another domain, I bought a bunch of domains around it. And I get a phone call from this guy in Cambridge, Mass. And he says, hey, thinking about selling that domain of yours? And I said, no, I'm going to be using it soon. I'm designing my brand new website. And so he said, well, okay, but I hired somebody to, come up with a name for my company, and they came up with Higher Minds, and I want it. And I really want it because I paid money to come up with this name. And I'm like, well, that's too bad that you paid this other firm to come up with my name, because I own it. So later, 2 months later, I get served a lawsuit telling me to get off my domain. I couldn't own my domain, right? And I had to defend myself in court for infringing on his rights. And I'm like, this sucks. Sucks. That's energy just pouring out into the mic, So I had no money at the time. I was barely, by then I was making a little bit of money off the jobs, a little bit of money. So I'm pretty scrappy, man, and when I'm threatened, I go into hyper fight mode, So I was telling everybody about my problem. I'm like in the elevator in my building talking about my problem, my domain is being threatened. And it turns out there's an IP lawyer in my building in the same elevator when I was complaining. And he looked over at me and he asked me a few questions, and then the next time I saw him, he asked me again about the situation that I was going through. And then he admitted that he's one of the big lawyers at one of the biggest IP law firms in America. And I'm like, oh, could you help me? And he said, you couldn't afford me. And I said, well, could you help me anyway? And he said, there might be a way. And so there's this thing called Lawyers for the Arts. Have you guys ever heard of it? So anyway, if you were poor and an artist, you could make a case to Lawyers for the Arts to get a lawyer to represent you for anything. So I basically, at that time, I was poor, and I was kind of an artist because I'm a writer. So I went to them and I told them that this guy was interested in representing me, and they said, well, if he's already interested, all right, we'll let you go through and get him signed up through this free lawyer thing. And so I got the best intellectual property lawyers in America to work for free to protect my domain. Now, because the law was so gray at the time, it was just new, this whole thing, they couldn't I didn't have a clear delineation rights to the name. Basically, if you're not using it in business before someone else, they can claim it. If they go out around you and get a trademark, right? And that's what that guy had done. Is he had attempted to get the trademark. And this is very important stuff for you guys to know. Always get your domain and your trademark at the same time, and start using it in business as soon as possible. Okay? Because otherwise, you can't defend one or the other against an attack. So I was in this gray area, and I had no real options except to ultimately sell it to him. But I put that guy through hell for a couple of months, and I got a lot of people helping me out in the effort to save the domain. In the end, I ended up selling it to him for 70 grand. So it was actually better because MediaBistro is a far better name. And
is that your seed round?
Yeah, that was my seed round.
But somebody then that you didn't know told you about, oh, you know this great site, Higher Minds, right?
Yes.
And that's when it kind of clicked.
So that's when it clicked that this was a business. Yeah, when I heard about my site through some total stranger who had never been to a party and who had organically heard about it through friends of friends of friends, that's when I knew, okay, this might be a business. I don't know what business, but I'm gonna figure it out. And so by '99, with all the lawsuit happening, I was writing my business plan and trying to make connections to money.
And so, but even though you say you didn't really realize it was a business, you did always keep it to just media, high-level media professionals. So it seems like you always kind of had a feeling you were going to do something.
No, I just wanted, I was a snob, and I really wanted to hang out with journalists and media people. I just didn't want to hang out with anybody else. I mean, call me crazy.
But so it was '99 and you were looking for money, and it was kind of bleak.
No, it was not bleak. Do you guys remember '99? Okay. So '99 was like on fire! We were all so psyched. We were going to cyber sets. Any of you guys go to cyber sets? No? Okay, good.
What's cyber set?
Why is this wet, man? Cyber sets was this really cool thing. It's kind of like this tonight, you know, like really exciting and fun. It was an event that would be put on by the New York New Media Association, which doesn't even exist anymore.
That became the New York Angels, actually.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, that was the people that, I mean, New York New Media did a whole lot of other stuff, but the core group of that went on to start the New York Angels.
All right, so
including David.
When the internet crashed and burned, New York New Media Association, the very organization that represented the internet here, the tech scene, went under. It was just like that bad. So, or if it didn't go under, it transformed.
Well, yeah.
All right, fine, it transformed. So anyway, those guys were putting on this monthly event, and it was so much fun. Everybody was, it was like this, a bubble. No, just kidding. But it felt, I don't know, it just felt powerful. Everybody was so happy. You would go to a party and people would say, oh yeah, I'm doing my third round, you know. And they'd just be bragging about their rounds, not their customers, sales, growth, nothing. It was all about rounds. It's like my next round, that. And I would ask these guys at these parties, I'd say, well, what's your business do? Like, how are you gonna make money? How are you gonna stay in business? They go, I don't care, I'm just gonna get my next round, you know? I mean, literally, it was just so insane. And that's kind of what brought it all down, in a way. So by March of 2000, I convinced somebody to give me money.
But it wasn't a VC, right? Or an angel?
You know, at the time, I thought he was a VC because I was so unsophisticated. I really didn't know what I was doing. And, you know, it was the first person I was introduced to, basically. It was, well, there were two of them. One was Marty Peretz, who's a media guy. He owns media properties and he invests in media companies. And so he came in as the not lead, you know, the non-lead. And then he said to me, well, you know, do you have a lead? And I, of course, laughed and said, no, yes, of course I have a lead. Sure, I'll get back to you with those terms tomorrow. And I walked out of the meeting and I'm like, oh my God.
What's the lead? What's the terms?
What? Yeah, right. What terms and what? I did have a lawyer who knew all this stuff. So, so I called my lawyer and I'm like, yeah, we got $250,000. I'm so happy. My lawyer was like, okay. And then I said, but we need a lead. And I don't know if he suggested or if I came up with this scheme, but the next day I called back Marty and I said, Marty, I don't like the terms the lead is giving me, because I did have someone in mind, but I didn't like his terms. He was running a recruiting firm, and he wanted to buy me for like no money and have me take stock in his company and work for him. So that was my quote-unquote lead in my head. And so I went to Marty and I said, I don't like my lead. His terms are really, they're onerous. Do you have any suggestions for leads? And sure enough, I mean, he was like a Harvard professor, and he knew all the Harvard guys. And as you all know, the Harvard guys are who run the money here, right? Those are the Stanford guys on the West Coast. So basically, he...
Yale guys do pretty good here, too.
What?
Yale guys do pretty good.
Oh, okay. So he basically introduced me to a hedge fund guy who had taken his class. I know you have to leave, so it's goodbye. Have a good night. She's not leaving because she's bored, I swear to you. She informed us in advance. So he basically, the hedge fund guy, his name is Bill Ackman, he's now pretty well known. At the time he was not well known. He took the meeting. Because honestly, he didn't have a lot of time to take meetings. He was running his hedge fund. And I basically went to him and I said, here's my company, I said, here's my business plan. And he looked at it and he just kind of threw it down. And I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? I'd never presented before.
Very Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's so Silicon Valley. Now I did that. And he said, tell me about the company, tell me about the business, just talk to me. And so I proceeded to try to talk to him without losing my total nerves and just like completely falling apart. He's like, this is new to me. I was used to doing this. And I told him about the passion that I had for the company, for my people. And I told him how passionate my people were for what we were doing for them. We were bringing them together. They were meeting their spouses through us. We had 5 marriages because of our parties, 3 babies, 1 out of wedlock, and countless one-night stands. I gave him all my stats. And not only that, but I was growing a real company because I had income. I mean, I was unusual on the internet. I actually had customers who were returning customers, and they were buying more, and they were paying me actual money to post jobs. And I had a huge plan for how I was going to revolutionize the way media people came together and media community around the world. And he sounded excited, and we followed up our email, and I thought I had convinced him, and he kept sending me questions, and I would answer them, and then I'd wait, and I'd wait, and I'd wait, and he didn't contact me again. So my lawyer was like, get him on the phone, make him, convince him. So I sent him another email, hey Bill, anything else you want from me? I was so shy and timid. I didn't know how the game was played. And
how much time was this from the first meeting?
I wish I could remember. I'm not sure.
Months or a year?
No. It seemed like eons. It was probably days, right? But I mean, I didn't want to be too pushy, but being a female is kind of hard. You have to modulate how pushy you are, because guys get turned off if you're too pushy, women get turned off if you're too pushy, and if you're not pushy enough, you don't get what you want. So basically, I sent him what I call a $1 million memo, and I answered every question with a really good response, but also challenging his presumptions. I said, if I were a guy, you would call this charisma. You wouldn't call it a cult of personality. If I were a guy, you would see in me leadership. If I were a guy, and at the end I said, I am a woman, hear me, help me roar. And that's a famous song. Any of you guys know that song? Yes, okay. So he wrote me 2 words after that, I'm in. And that was the best email I ever got.
For $1 million.
Well, he didn't give $1 million, he gave us the rest, $750.
Oh.
Yeah, he said I'm in for the rest. So the round was $1 million round. And so basically I told my lawyer, okay, we got him, he's in. And my lawyer's like, make him sign the term sheet, or whatever, the next step was. He's like, get it done. And I'm like, what? You're going to say everything's fine, we're good. He's like, deals are falling apart everywhere. It's March 2000. I don't know if any of you guys know that date. March of 2000? Yes? Okay. The whole world fell apart in March of 2000. The internet fell apart in March of 2000. There's like AD and, MD and AD. Before March and after March. PM and AM, basically. And so I didn't get it done. I waited. And so I waited, and he waited, and the lawyer would call me every week and he'd say, did you get him? Did you get him on the phone? Have you contacted him? I'm like, don't worry, Bill's gonna do it, don't worry. And so finally July rolls along, and Bill finally agrees, but he changed the terms a little bit. So the valuation changed somewhat. I think it started out as $4 million pre-money, and it went down to $3.5 million pre-money. So not so bad.
And then he gave you the full $750, or?
No. He said, how much do you need to start? And again, unsophisticated, clueless, dummy, I say half, right? So they just put all that money right into my bank account, $500,000. And I thought, wow, I could leave town and this guy could never track me down. I could go to Europe. He doesn't know who I am. I didn't go to Harvard. He doesn't know how to find me. I'm
not Facebook.
Yeah, there was no Facebook. And I just thought, well, is it worth it like to take a $500,000 now, or maybe $1 million or $2 million later when I sold the company or went public or whatever I was supposed to do with that money?
There was actually a moment when you thought that?
Yeah, I did think that because I just thought, how easy is this? You go to a couple of meetings and you make $500,000. I could do this around the world. I have a website, like, dude, that's portable. So.
Okay, so then you're running into MediaBistro for a few months, but then you bought an office. You got out of your apartment with the cats.
Yeah, I got out of my apartment.
You hired some people.
But then I had like 2 interns with the 2 cats jumping on them, and they were just sending out invoices. And now I needed to do this thing. I had written a plan based on like fantasy and fairy tales, right? That's what all business plans are, aren't they? Right? Yeah. There are fantasies and fairy tales. They're the things we hope to achieve, but how, we've never done this before, at least I haven't. So here I was, a journalist with, barely any background in business. I'd written about business, but that is totally different from doing it. And now I had the money to do this crazy plan that I'd come up with. And so I went to lunch with Bill after I decided not to steal his money. We had lunch, and he said, okay, what's your number?
I can't wait for him to see this video.
That's going to be funny.
Did you know Laurel thought about robbing you? So I'm going to email it to him.
I don't believe it. So we sit down at lunch in some place in Midtown, and he looks at me and he said, what's your number? I had never been asked that question before, so I didn't have any answer, and I thought, oh God, I better say something smart. So I said, well, let's see, if I want $1 million, which is an enormous amount of money, for me personally, then, present value of $1 million must be about $7 million now. So, okay, $7 million would make me happy. And he looked at me and said, what? Are you kidding? Oh my God, we won't make any money if you make only $7 million. This company has to be a $30 million company at least for me to make my money back, and 20 times my money. And I looked at him and I thought, holy shit, this guy is dumb. He just gave me all this money and I'm gonna lose it, or just worse, I'm gonna like underperform, and I'm gonna disappoint him. Oh my God, what have I done? It was really scary to like have this guy expect so much of me and have me like in charge of his $500,000 when I knew there was no way I was going to make it into a $30 million company in any way, shape, or form. And then over time, I of course faked it and said, oh yeah, of course, hell yes. 30 million, yeah, sure. If you say so. And he's like, yes, I say so. Yes, I see your vision. I believe in your vision. I believe in you. You can do this. And over the next few months of spending the money down and like seeing the results of what we were doing and seeing the company get more and more traction, I still didn't believe it. But I had to, because this was our shared vision now, and I had to make this shit work, right? So next thing that happened
Was
the crash. Okay, so the crash was happening around us, but we weren't quite aware of it. But that happened shortly thereafter. I mean, everybody recognized it as a crash. And I just started spending, because guess what? Nobody's posting jobs in a recession. So while we had that like little initial movement, over time it was just going down. And it was very, very disturbing. And then, worse, 9/11 hits, okay? So it almost couldn't have gotten worse, right? Because all of us are like struggling to stay ahead of a recession, and 9/11 hits. How many of you guys were here during 9/11? Just 4 of you, okay? There were many of us who wanted to just shut down and move and leave. It was very, very disturbing and upsetting. Lower Manhattan was closed for like a week or so. I mean, it was bizarre. It was like
it was longer than that.
Yeah, okay. It was I blocked that. It was a police state. My employees were crying. They came to work crying because they had seen things falling from the buildings. And I was questioning our very existence. We were a party company, half, sort of. That was what we did to generate traffic to the site. I called it party marketing, because I got these people around the country to go to parties in their cities and then come to the website to do stuff like post jobs and talk on the bulletin boards and create community. right? So how was I going to keep an upbeat party atmosphere during like the worst time of America, really? So it was pretty tough.
But all the way along, Bill was asking, how are you doing on money? Do you need more money?
So Bill seemed very nice. He was very gentle, and he gave me a little bit more money when I asked for it, like $40,000 or something to get me by at a certain point after 9/11, because I was panicking about money. And then we had a meeting set up for a couple of months later, and I lied to Bill. I told him I was already out of money, right? Because he kept saying, hey, come back to me when you need the money, right? And I just had a sense that I needed to test him on his promise of more money, because we didn't meet any of our milestones, and technically he didn't really have to give us the money. But I was very...
But it was still part of the initial 750 or whatever that he promised, right?
Yeah.
Committed, yeah.
He'd only given his portion of the million, which was like 300, I don't know, what's 175 and whatever. He'd given whatever it took to get me to 500,000, his portion of that. So I felt entitled to the rest of the million, because hey, we're together going for the vision. And so I called him, and it was a little premature, and I said, hey, I'm ready for the next round of capital. And he's like, okay, well, let's meet about it. And we met, and I hadn't met any of my milestones, and had accomplished none of my goals. And growth wasn't exactly exponential at that point because of the economy and 9/11. And he was like, come back to me once you're profitable. Just get profitable, and then come back. And that was on the phone, and I hung up, and I thought, okay, he's not like giving up on me, and he's still like there for me. He's very nice. But did he just tell me that he's not giving me any more money? Because if you think about it, getting profitable, why would I need his money, right? It was kind of like this moment where it was a crazy moment. Luckily, I had prepared for this. I still had a couple of months left in the bank, and I also had gotten a home equity line of credit on my apartment, so I was risking my apartment to keep the business going if I needed to. And then I scrambled like nobody's business to find new revenue streams.
And what were they?
Basically, the thing I've learned over the course of doing all of this is to be very close to the customer. I know everybody says that, but I did this party every month that I consider to be like a focus group every single month, and we did it around the country. So it was a listening exercise. I would go to those parties, and I would ask people, what can we do for you? What will you pay for? What else do you need? And I developed friendships through these parties as well. So some friends came to me and said, hey, I'm teaching classes. Why don't I do them under MediaBistro brand? And I could teach classes here, and you could make money off that, and we could split the revenue. And I'm like, okay, great. So one of these teachers came in and started teaching classes, and she got very excited about the prospect and said, let's create a school. Let's create like an entire series of classes. So we started doing that. And before we knew it, that became our second revenue stream, and she was there running.
Most substantial, right?
No, jobs were the first and most profitable. Second was education, and it's become more profitable because now it's online. At the time, we could only do it offline because there was no technology to do it online, really. So now we're doing them online, and we had a membership, and we had premium content that people were paying for. So we had 10,000 members signing up for stuff and paying us a monthly fee, or yearly fee, really. And so that was another revenue stream, and then conferences, seminars, things like that, so events. So the other thing I would say that's really critical to any of your businesses, you think they're digital, but guess what? You have to do offline stuff. You can't get away from it. And we've discovered that over the many years we've been in business, and one of the reasons we've stayed in business is because we're bringing people together, and it's a very valuable thing for them.
So then it was how many years you figured all this out, and then it's 2005, and was it 2005, right, when Juniper, or 2007?
2007 what?
When Juniper...
Oh, Jupiter, yeah.
Jupiter.
So I started thinking the company might be worth close to that 30 million that he was talking about. Over time, I started to adopt his vision of the company. over time, I got used to being a CEO. And
did you stay in touch, like all the way through, and keep doing?
Yeah, he was busy though. He would say, "I don't want to talk to you till you're 2 million in sales." Really, like, stay away. So that gave me actually like real runway to do whatever I needed to do and not worry about him, because he was such an imposing figure. And he was a little, he was scary to me because I was, again, unsophisticated, not, in the finance world. And so he would come to board meetings and make me cry, basically, because he would ask these tough questions that I assumed I should know. Because he was asking, why would he ask if I shouldn't know that, right? And I didn't know them, and I didn't know how to structure the pages, the pagination in the handout we were giving him, and the financials. The financials weren't quite the way he liked them, and oh God, it was just like endless. He was very, very demanding, and so it was good that he didn't come to too many meetings for too long. So yeah. So by the time we were ready to sell, we really had built a lot of value, and I actually, I was able to see his vision and own it for myself, and it became my vision. And I realized if you have to have a number in your head that you believe in, that you can go after, and you will get there, right? And so that became my number, and I was aiming for it. And believe it or not, that inspires your whole team, your staff, your salespeople, everything you do. And that's really, really critical, is that visualization of the number that you want to achieve. And so by that time, by 2007, our sales were such that a multiple of our sales would sell us for 30 million, no problem, right? And we were very profitable as well. I think we were like 30% profitable. And we were growing at 30% a year as well. So all of these numbers combined led to, hey, maybe we should start listening to some of these guys who are asking if we want to sell, because they've been asking casually, but hey, you gotta, it's casual at first and then it gets serious. So I started taking meetings about selling the company and hearing what other people thought. And we had a banker on the board of directors, and I asked him to put together some kind of auction to see if he could, get the numbers up too. And he thought it was time and we could do that. And so he did, and the auction numbers were disappointing. They, either the banker wasn't that good, or, people weren't believing in the vision, or they didn't see the value, or whatever. But the numbers weren't as good as I needed to sell the company. And then a year later, my lawyer was friends with Alan Meckler, and my lawyer said, "Hey, Alan, this company is still growing really fast, and they have a job board that's very successful, and you're interested in a job board. Maybe this is something you might consider purchasing." And that's how it went down.
And when Bill heard that you were getting acquired,
what?
He sent you the rest of the money.
Oh, yeah. I love how he's trying to speak me on. So Bill had a Kleiner Perkins document, and he had the option at any point to put the rest of the money in. So he just put it right in right before the sale, so he could get the benefit of all of those shares that he could own. And so that's when he put it in, when we were profitable.
And you wound up selling for the $20 million. Well,
yeah, $20 million and a $3 million earnout. And so Bill was a very happy guy. He basically risked less than $500,000, and he made many times his money. So he did the right thing. I'm happy, we're happy, everyone's happy.
So, real quick before we get to Q&A, how soon after you sold, well, it's only been that long, since it's only been 5 years, but did you decide to be an angel investor, that you were going to help other startups grow?
Well, first I had to do the earnouts, so I did that for 2 years. Then I went around the world for 8 months with my husband, because, honestly, what are you going to do? If you sell your company, if you don't have kids, you have nothing tying you down, you're going to go around the world, right? So that's what we did. We went around and we just kind of unplugged from the internet and basically said, permanent vacation message. We're gone, we don't know when we're coming back, and it was this very free feeling, just letting go of all responsibility. It's the first time in my life I ever felt safe, okay? Because what I didn't tell you, I make lots of jokes and haha, but I was scared all the time. Every minute of that thing, that ride, I was scared. Even when we were doing well, I was looking behind me at Gawker and other sites that were doing job boards, and I was panicking that they were going to take our customers. So that's another thing I would impart to you guys. Try to enjoy it more, because even though competitors will come up, around you, if you have the customer and the relationship is built with the customer, it's very hard to take that customer away. They're lazy, those customers, and they're loyal in many ways, unless you're not listening to them and not serving them, right? If you're not doing that, yeah, then some other guy can come along and do that. But if you're in touch with your customer, we had customer breakfast once a month, where we listened to those HR directors and we brought new ones in and we'd say, what can we do for you? What's not being done? What else can we do? And so those people didn't leave for Gawker's job board. They didn't leave for Indeed.com. They didn't leave, and they left Monster to come to us, They left the New York Times to come to us. So that's a very valuable lesson.
So what do you think is, and interestingly, somebody on Twitter a couple of weeks ago said, why hasn't anybody built a GitHub for other disciplines, for other verticals? And everybody was like, well, Laurel kind of built, kind of, not exactly,
yeah.
Kind of, but I mean, it was a way to trade information. So what do you think about online? I mean, now everybody, there's like these micro communities where I look at these sites for really there's enough people to like sustain that? I mean, what do you think about that whole...
Micro communities?
No, not micro communities, but about the future of, online community and bringing it offline. I mean, it sounds like you should bring it offline, which you've kind of gotten back to with the serial.
I don't know very many companies that have lasted as long as we did and continued growing and continued serving the customer and the customer still loves them. When you think about it, how many, right? It lasted 16 years on the web, but it's because of the offline stuff. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
Kind of. But when did you decide to be an angel investor? Did you?
When did I start? I went around the world.
Back on the startup track.
Went around the world, and of course, the minute you sell, everyone's on you. They're like, okay, what are you doing next? And you're like, didn't I do enough already? I worked my ass off for years and years and years. I built up this wonderful company and these wonderful relationships with the customer. Isn't that enough? Can I die now? And no, they won't let you die. So that's when we went around the world and unplugged, came back, bought this gorgeous apartment and renovated it, and then I went back to MediaBistro for a year. I left there last June. And the first thing, again, everyone's asking me is, what are you going to do next? I have no idea. So I started doing what I do best, right? What do? I'm a connector. I cannot help myself from connecting. I mean, it's really internal. So I started connecting with startups and startup founders and started meeting with them. I had a series of breakfasts. I called it like the CEO breakfast. And then I met up with some other people who were doing a breakfast of the same group. So I started joining up with them. And so now here I'm at this breakfast, meeting other entrepreneurs, meeting startup founders. I'm getting excited, I'm getting juiced, right? And they start asking me for help. Laurel, obviously there's the money thing, but also they wanted help. How do you go about building an audience? What's the next step for me? What would you do if you were me doing this? And so I started having meetings, and meetings led to, maybe this is the next thing for me. Maybe I should start investing in some of these little companies and not start my own.
So did you ever refer to MediaBistro as a startup? Did you? Yeah. Did you call it a startup? I have a startup.
Yeah, we were startup. Yeah, no, we always felt like we were a startup. Yeah.
Curious. All right. So questions from anybody?
Please, I wish you guys were sitting up here, like closer. So far away.
I was wondering that because of the industry you're in, was it more effective because it was media, or would other niche groups work as well?
I've thought about this a lot. I think anybody but accountants would enjoy meeting each other. No, seriously, think about yourselves, right? You could have stayed home and watched this on Ustream or whatever that means. The video maybe. But you wanted to come early, you came early, not just for pizza, but to see who else is here. I mean, we're never going to be able to replace that feeling of wanting to just talk with a person on a Friday night or a Thursday night or whatever, and just shoot the whatever. I'm not sure how much I can cuss, because I'm not sure where this is going. 13-year-olds might be watching this.
It's going on PBS.
Yeah. So there's also, there's the sexual connection too. I mean, I hate to throw sex in all the time, but I do. And I'm married, don't worry. I'm not going after you guys. But there's like the energy that you feed off of each other, and men and women like to meet, right? And single people like to meet up. So it's not just a professional thing. It's never professional anymore. That's the mistake people make. They think that you can be professional now. We are in a new era, a new generation of people, and we mix the professional and the personal by second nature. We can't help it.
I was just curious, especially like in New York, what type of startups have you been talking to that you're, or what kind of segments even have you been talking to that you're especially excited about these days?
It's a little scary right now for investors because there's so much stuff that is so similar and it's so easy to start anything. So to me, I'm still getting my feet, wet. I'm still learning. And what I've started to do is bring little startups over to VCs I know and then watch them. And what questions are they asking them? What do they like? What don't they like? So I can learn too. But I like things that are defensible with a technology that's not easily copyable. So something that's patented or patent pending or whatever, something like this. They all say disruptive, right? But I mean, it is rather interesting to see something like you've never seen before. And what scares me are the things that are just me too, me too, me too. Like I'm not going to say which companies. That's Techstars this morning, but there were companies that they already have 5 competitors out there. So I don't like a particular type of industry or type of company. I just want to see something that's unusual, that's solving a problem for a real customer that the customer will pay for. I don't like things that are advertising driven. I hate that. I mean, our company had 4 or 5 business models, and only one of those was advertising. So I feel like that's just too fractionalized. There's too many companies trying to get advertising. So
there's not enough advertisers, or
There's not enough advertisers or agencies to support.
yeah. Ad tech scares me too because I saw that Lumascape. Have you guys seen the Lumascape? It's this like giant infographic of 1,000.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
no,
1,000 or 2,000, whatever, I don't know, this huge number of like ad tech companies, and he portions them out into segments that are alike. They're exactly alike. So you have like 100 of them exactly alike. I mean, I just wouldn't know where to start investing there, like just because eventually you know what's going to happen. There are going to be winners and there are going to be losers, and some are going to get gobbled up, and that's going to be like a good exit for them, just to like get gobbled up by a competitor, but not for a lot of money, just to like
return the money.
Yeah, and some of them are just going to go under, some of them aren't going to get their next round. I mean, it's scary days, especially with Europe and what's going on over there. What happened with Europe today? I haven't been up on my news. Anything? Did they bail it out? You guys should be paying attention to this. This is the kind of thing, when there was a bubble in 1999, all right, people who were too optimistic actually got burned. The people who were reading the news and reading lots of different things and not just focusing on their one little company, their one little industry, those were the people who got smart and got out quickly and saved their asses. So right now, I would say we might be in the same position. I'm watching Europe very closely.
Hello. I'm just going to chill. Thank you. As the person from Europe who has escaped from there yesterday, it's all gone to hell, so you're right to watch it. You mentioned Techstars this morning. I was at the demo day as well. As somebody who had to work and was made to work incredibly hard to become profitable or to try and earn the money that somebody had agreed to put into you in the first place, what do you think when you see startups that through, I think to be fair, the reputation and profile of Techstars are closing similar rounds of money before they have the product? How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, this was happening back in '99, and I was the exception at the time to have any revenue. In fact, VCs would have considered me a bad choice to invest in because I had revenue already and it was so low, right? And my growth wasn't like this; it was like So I don't feel resentful. I feel like if they can convince somebody to give them money and get a chance, and maybe they'll win. I mean, I'm happy for them. I don't feel bad at all. I'm one of those optimistic, crazy optimistic people.
Following up on that a little bit, what do you think entrepreneurs today need to worry about that you didn't have to worry about? And the other way around, what did you have to worry about back then that we don't need to worry about?
So what I needed to worry about back then was technology in a big fucking way, okay? So do you know how many CTOs I went through before I could have something that was like a solid base to build on? I mean, I went through so many tech people because I was determined and I was experimenting and I was like driven. And so the first website was PearlScript, right? That was for free, so okay, it's free. It's not a database though. And now I had to learn what I needed, what I didn't know to ask for. So I went on New York New Media's bulletin boards, and I just started peppering the tech people, the developers there with questions like, help, I have this great website, I need help, damsel in distress. And then I started having meetings with developers to learn, basically. These were my learning sessions. I didn't have GA to teach me, right? Or any of these, I didn't, there was no way to learn this stuff except through talking to people and asking lots of questions. So then started asking questions, what do I need to build on? What do I need? What don't I need, So quickly I realized I needed a database. I needed a big database that could grow and scale, right? And then, then I started building it fast in Cold Fusion with a guy, right? And then, boom, 3 months later, nothing's done. I had to switch from that guy to another guy, and that guy is building on SQL Server and, whatever, I don't remember what it was at the time, but, so that was one of those things that we had to worry about that you guys don't have to worry about at all. Now you have job board plugins. You got so much fucking cool shit. I'm so jealous. And there's new stuff being developed every day. It's just so cool. So what did okay, so that's what one part of your question. And then the other part was what should you worry about? Well, you guys know this already, but it's the flip side of the same coin, which is it's too easy to get in. And so the big problem with you guys is you have to learn how to do partnerships and big scalable, get yourself scaled faster than ever before. Because there's so much freaking noise and there's so many competitors, and if you can't be the guy to get just the right person on your team, meaning your advisory board, who can introduce you to just the right companies, you've got to do more partnerships with corporations than I ever had a dream of, okay? Because you got to get that scaled fast, and those corporations, those old school, mainstream, old media sometimes, they have relationships with customers that are invaluable, so you need them more than I ever needed them. So that's something that you guys probably already noticed, but I mean, it really does make the difference between a company that's going to succeed with the same technology as another company that's not. It's that one phone call that one exec made. It's scary. So it's relationships. You guys need to develop relationships better than I ever had to.
Yeah, so just regurgitating your timeline a little bit, I started in the mid-90s and you didn't raise your first round of capital until 2000, 2001. 2000. Which 5 years is a long time.
Right.
So maybe this is slightly a personal question, but just for those of us who are entrepreneurs in the room who have a sort of a runway just from a capital perspective, what did you do during that time period?
That's a great point. So I never saw this as I'm going to build something and sell it. I saw this as this is the rest of my life, right? So I didn't even think about, anything except doing what was best for the baby company to make it as important and valuable to the customer as could be. So I didn't care about money. I didn't care about raising money. I mean, I needed money to do some of the ambitious shit I wanted to do and throw stuff against the wall. But I really, I saw this as a long haul thing, and I built those relationships first, and I did everything as, to entrench myself as much as possible. Now, can you do that as much these days? That's a real question. I'm not sure about that. I think a lot of companies, unless you're doing a community thing, actually, if you're doing a community thing, you can do that, because communities don't move that quickly. And, to call Facebook a community or MySpace a community, obviously, MySpace and Friendster weren't communities, because what happened? You know, they didn't, the people migrated, they left. If you're doing a real community, where you're building relationships with those people and they're like feeling the value of that, they don't leave exactly. Now maybe Facebook is a community, I don't know yet. We'll see in the next few years. But so I feel like that is a very defensible technology, a defensible non-tech tech, right? So I don't know what kind of business you're building, but if if it's that kind of business, a relationship business, then you're okay to build slowly and organically over time. In fact, that's probably the only way you can do it. And that's what I was building. But if it's a tech-driven business, it's a whole other story. If it's a enterprise business, whole other story. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so I have a tech business, so I don't have the luxury of being able to sort of, I understand exactly what you mean about building community and having sort of those people. Oh, sorry. You probably heard what I was saying, but yeah, that's helpful. I guess it doesn't really answer my question, which is, if you run out of money and your Amex is fully tapped out at 97, what do you actually do?
Okay, so I was sustaining myself through freelance writing, through moonlighting for the first few years, and I wasn't paying for drinks, so people bought their own drinks at the parties. I was just the organizer and the introducer, the connector. I was the connective tissue. So I didn't outlay that much money, and the website was free when it first went up. I mean, the guy who put it up did it for free for every band rad in perpetuity, as long as I used his Perl script. And so I wasn't putting out a lot of money. I was a bootstrapper, baby. I was very cautious, and whenever I put out money, I made sure that it was a revenue stream that I was putting it into. And so when I started doing content on the website, that was like, woo, big step. We're putting out money. And we're not getting money for that, but maybe eventually there will be advertising, but that didn't pan out for years. So that was like a risk. Parties around the country, I considered marketing, so I was putting out money for them just to like fly myself around to some of the parties and organize it. I hired an event planner, an event manager on staff in New York to like organize all those. But that was marketing. So, I mean, I didn't have to do the marketing. I could have stopped that. I could have stopped almost anything, right? And just like hunkered down. And the job listings were starting to make money, so I could have lived on that. There's a job site right now called Journalism Jobs. I don't think he ever took a cent of money, and he's survived through everything. He's not as big as MediaBistro, and I don't think he has as many revenue streams, but he and his wife are doing quite well at this lifestyle business. So, that's your answer. I guess for a while you do it as a lifestyle, and then you raise money and blow it up or something.
So, since I pulled the microphone, a tangential question to that. Some of your revenue streams would arguably be considered very unscalable, especially back in the early days. Classes and circle spaces.
Yeah.
And if you were to go to a VC investor and say, I want to start a business and I'm going to have 3 classes a week, which is might get laughed at because it's unscalable. It's not going to be. It's not $1 billion market for that. So how did you ever get that advice from someone, and how did you?
The investor, the hedge fund guy, Bill, he hated the classes. He was like, "What is this?" We're like, "Hey, it's keeping us alive right now, dude." And he's like, "Oh, we're gonna get rid of the classes, yuck." And sure enough, we took them online, and now they're like really profitable. So I don't know. It just depends on how technology catches up, right? Now they're talking about replacing bookkeepers. Who would have thought, right? So tomorrow, the thing that you think is unscalable could be scalable. You just don't know. A woman.
Hi. Any hard lessons or anything you would change, do differently?
Okay. Advisors. All right, so we're all told get advisors, right, and give them stock and all that shit. You gotta manage your advisors, right? You really have to use them or get rid of them and don't feel bad, okay? I stupidly promised this advisor like a shitload of stock, right? And then I followed up with him, I told him, I gave him a list of things I wanted him to do, and then he said, okay, and then it didn't happen, and I'm a bad manager, so I didn't follow up soon enough, so 7 years go by, and we lost touch, and then we got back into touch, and he's like, yeah, I'm not giving back that stock. And I'm like, but you don't deserve it, David. Hope you're watching this now. You don't deserve it. And can you give it back to me so that I can give it to some of the staffers who really worked hard and we're about to sell and, you know, this is worth something. And no, he wouldn't. He kept his $70,000 worth of stock that he didn't earn. So anyway, my point being, it's your fault. It's my fault for doing that. It's my fault for not cutting him off immediately after I didn't get what I needed. But I was so intimidated. My advisor was so impressive. I was scared, you know? And you guys should not be afraid to use your advisors. And if they're not being useful, fire them. So that's a lesson.
I would have two questions, sorry. First question is, what do you think about the paid content on the internet?
I'm a real big believer in paid content.
And regarding that, have you heard about the Central European startup called Piano? That seems to have a very successful business model, and because of that, because most of the paywalls work only one side, and Piano works on multiple sites, connecting more major news and other sites, and it works like cable TV, so you pay once and you have access to more premium content.
That's great.
So
I think you will see a future in which content is going to come back, and I think also as video content starts to become higher level and more professional, you know, people want to pay for stuff that's good, that's curated, and they will get sick of all the crap that's out there. I'm already sick of it. I'm overwhelmed by crap. But I still read the New York Times content every day and the Wall Street Journal, and when I really need news and need to know like what's really going on, I am not going to some like just random place, right? And I'm paying for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. But I think that's a really cool model right there, to just pay it, you know, once and you can get a bunch of stuff. But I think also start looking for video, high-level television shows online that you're going to be paying for. Because guess what? I don't want to pay for HBO on TV anymore for a whole series of shit that I don't watch. I just want HBO unbundled online. And that's going to happen. They have to make it happen.